In the spring of 1944, inside a guarded intelligence building in Berlin, German officers gathered around a long table buried beneath aerial photographs, intercepted radio traffic, and reconnaissance summaries. They were not analyzing Allied supply dumps or troop concentrations. They were tracking a single individual. His name was George S. Patton, and German intelligence was obsessed with knowing where he would strike next. For months, the German High Command devoted more resources to following Patton's movements than to any other Allied commander. Not Dwight Eisenhower, who oversaw the entire Allied war effort, not Bernard Montgomery, whose forces had driven Axis troops across North Africa. One American general dominated German intelligence reports like no other. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the senior German commander in Western Europe, personally monitored any information related to Patton. Sightings, rumors, radio chatter, anything connected to Patton was treated as high-priority intelligence. Rundstedt had faced some of the finest commanders the Allies possessed, but Patton was different. Patton frightened him. The Germans first encountered Patton in November 1942 during Operation Torch, the Allied landings in North Africa. Patton commanded the Western Task Force, leading 35,000 American troops ashore in Morocco. It was the United States' first major ground operation against Axis forces. German commanders watched carefully. They always studied enemy generals, searching for habits, weaknesses, predictable patterns. What they saw unsettled them almost immediately. Patton moved with an alarming speed, faster than American commanders were supposed to move. The U.S. Army had a reputation for deliberate, methodical advances backed by massive firepower. Patton ignored that script. Within 3 days, Casablanca fell, and French forces surrendered. His troops advanced at a pace that stunned German observers. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, commanding Axis forces in the Mediterranean, demanded a full intelligence profile on this American general. Who was he? How did he think? What doctrine guided him? The answers disturbed them deeply. Patton had spent his career studying German warfare. He read German military theory in the original language. He walked First World War battlefields in France, where German offensives had nearly shattered the Western Front. He understood German operational thinking as well as, and sometimes better than, the officers opposing him. That realization would soon prove terrifyingly accurate. In February 1943, German forces under Field Marshal Erwin Rommel launched a major offensive through the Kasserine Pass in Tunisia. The attack smashed into inexperienced American units and sent U.S. troops retreating in disorder. It was the worst defeat American ground forces would suffer during the entire war. German commanders observed closely, curious how the Americans would react under real pressure. Would they fall back completely, replace their commanders, lose confidence in their ability to fight? The answer arrived quickly. In early March, George Patton was appointed commander of the Second Corps, the very formation that had collapsed at Kasserine. German intelligence officers expected weeks, perhaps months, before the Americans regained cohesion. Instead, what followed stunned them. Within 2 weeks, the Second Corps was transformed. Discipline was brutally enforced. Uniform standards were restored. Units were reorganized. Leadership replaced where necessary, and aggressive patrolling resumed almost immediately. The same American soldiers who had broken under pressure were suddenly probing German lines, attacking with confidence and speed. German reconnaissance reports described a noticeable change in American behavior. Patrols were bolder, movements were faster. Positions that had been lightly defended were suddenly assaulted. The shift was too abrupt to be explained by reinforcements or new equipment. Rommel noticed it as well. In his diary, he recorded that American forces had become unexpectedly dangerous. Their responses were quicker, their attacks more coordinated. Someone new was clearly in command. That realization sent a chill through German headquarters. They had identified Patton as a capable commander in North Africa. Now they saw something worse. He could take broken troops and make them lethal in a matter of days. German intelligence updated its assessments. Patton was not merely aggressive, he was transformational. And that made him far more dangerous than any general who simply followed doctrine. July 1943 brought the Allied invasion of Sicily, a campaign the Germans believed they understood. British General Bernard Montgomery's Eighth Army was intended to lead the advance up the eastern coast toward Messina, while Patton's U.S. Seventh Army was assigned a supporting role on the western flank. On paper, Patton was not the main effort. In practice, he refused to behave like a supporting commander. Almost immediately after landing, Patton drove his forces forward with relentless speed. His columns advanced day and night, pushing through rugged terrain that planners had assumed would slow any army to a crawl. German units expected deliberate Allied movements. Instead, they found American armor and infantry appearing in places that should have taken days to reach. German commanders trying to withdraw toward the Strait of Messina suddenly discovered they were racing Patton rather than retreating in good order. Units that believed they had ample time to disengage were given only hours. Withdrawal plans collapsed. Roads clogged with vehicles, artillery, and fleeing troops as Patton's forces closed in. When Patton reached Messina, he arrived before Montgomery, despite starting farther away and fighting continuously along the route. He had covered roughly 200 miles in just 39 days of combat. German after-action reports were filled with a mixture of professional respect and alarm. One officer wrote that Patton fought like a panzer commander, not an American infantry general. He exploited weak points instantly. He took risks Allied doctrine discouraged. He advanced before defenders could react. Most unsettling of all, German analysts concluded that Patton thought the way they did. That realization deepened their fear. An enemy who understands your doctrine can counter it. An enemy who uses it against you is far worse. In August 1943, at the height of his success in Sicily, George Patton nearly destroyed his own career. While visiting evacuation hospitals, he encountered soldiers suffering from combat fatigue. To Patton, raised on a rigid belief in discipline and courage, these men appeared to be cowards. In 2 separate incidents, he struck hospitalized soldiers, once even threatening one with a pistol. The fallout was immediate and severe. Word reached General Dwight Eisenhower, who was furious. The story leaked to the American press. Newspapers condemned Patton. Members of Congress demanded his removal. Calls grew for the general who had just delivered a stunning victory to be sent home in disgrace. German intelligence followed the scandal closely. They had identified Patton as the most dangerous Allied commander. Now, astonishingly, the Americans themselves seemed ready to sideline him. To German officers, it felt like an unexpected gift. But Eisenhower did not dismiss Patton. Instead, he removed him from frontline command, reprimanded him harshly, and kept him in England. This decision unsettled German intelligence far more than Patton's potential removal ever could have. If the Americans were keeping Patton despite the scandal, they reasoned, it must be because they were saving him for something critical. By early 1944, German agents tracked Patton's every movement in Britain. They knew he was there. They knew he was not commanding any of the forces visibly preparing for an invasion of Europe. That absence led them to a powerful conclusion. Patton must be commanding the main invasion force, hidden from view. What the Germans did not know was that the First United States Army Group did not truly exist. It was a phantom formation, radio traffic without troops, inflatable tanks, wooden aircraft, and fake headquarters designed to deceive aerial reconnaissance. And at the center of this illusion stood George Patton. The deception worked because the Germans believed one unshakable truth: wherever Patton was, the real attack would come. Convinced Patton would strike across the Pas de Calais, the shortest route into France, German commanders reinforced the area heavily. Their strongest defenses and best armored reserves waited there, poised to meet Patton, an enemy who was never coming. When Allied troops landed in Normandy on June 6, 1944, German leaders hesitated. Was this the real invasion, or merely a diversion to draw forces south before Patton's decisive blow? For weeks they waited, and in that hesitation, the fate of the war in Western Europe was sealed. On August 1, 1944, George Patton finally returned to combat command. He was given control of the United States Third Army, and within hours of entering the Normandy battlefield, German fears were confirmed. This was no symbolic appointment. Patton was unleashed. What followed stunned even Allied commanders. In the first 2 weeks of August, Third Army advanced farther than any Allied force had managed in the previous 2 months. Patton's divisions exploded out of the Normandy bocage, surged across Brittany, then pivoted east toward Paris and the Seine. German units that had held defensive lines for weeks suddenly found American armor in their rear, cutting supply routes, isolating headquarters, and collapsing entire sectors of the front. German command and control disintegrated. Communications broke down. Orders contradicted each other. Commanders no longer knew where the front line was because Patton kept moving it faster than maps could be updated. Field Marshal Gunther von Kluge, now the senior German commander in the West, sent increasingly desperate reports to Berlin. The situation, he warned, was slipping beyond control. By mid-August, Patton identified a decisive opportunity near the town of Falaise. Retreating German armies were funneling through a narrowing gap. If Allied forces could close it, hundreds of thousands of German troops would be trapped. Patton drove north while Canadian and Polish forces pushed south. The trap tightened relentlessly. Inside the pocket, German discipline collapsed. Vehicles were abandoned. Units disintegrated into fleeing individuals. Officers lost authority as panic spread. When the fighting ended, more than 50,000 German soldiers had been captured and tens of thousands more killed or wounded. Vast quantities of tanks, artillery, and transport were destroyed or abandoned. Surviving German officers later compared the disaster to Stalingrad. Some said it was worse. At least at Stalingrad, they had time to understand what was happening. Against Patton, there was no time at all. The German army in France had been shattered, not by slow pressure, but by speed, violence, and relentless momentum. The last and most dramatic confirmation of German fear came in December 1944. With defeat looming, Hitler launched a final gamble through the Ardennes forest, a massive counteroffensive intended to split the Allied armies and force a negotiated peace. The attack achieved surprise. American units were driven back. Bastogne was surrounded. For a moment, it appeared the Germans had regained the initiative. General Eisenhower summoned his senior commanders and asked a single question: how soon could they counterattack? Most spoke in terms of weeks. Moving armies in winter conditions required time, preparation, and logistics. Then Patton spoke. He said he could attack in 48 hours. The room fell silent. Turning an entire army 90 degrees in winter was considered impossible. But Patton had already prepared for this moment. His intelligence officer, Colonel Oscar Koch, had warned him months earlier that the Ardennes was vulnerable. Patton had quietly written contingency plans while others dismissed the idea. Within hours of Eisenhower's meeting, Third Army began its pivot north. More than 250,000 men and tens of thousands of vehicles moved across frozen roads in brutal weather. German commanders were stunned. They had expected time. Instead, Patton was already striking their flank. On December 26th, Patton's forces broke through to Bastogne. The German offensive collapsed. After the war, German generals were asked what had gone wrong. Many gave the same answer. They had not expected Patton to move so fast. From North Africa to Sicily, from Normandy to the Ardennes, German commanders consistently underestimated one thing: speed. Patton understood warfare as they did: movement, shock, exploitation, but he executed it faster than they believed possible. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt later summarized it simply. Patton, he said, was the most dangerous Allied commander they faced. He was the master of mobile warfare, and he earned that fear by fighting the German army the way it fought best, only faster, harder, and without hesitation.